Many observers tonight are framing Iran's recent actions in the Strait of Hormuz as a calculated escalation, a familiar tactic in a long-running regional chess match. But what's being missed is the sheer scale of the miscalculation, a move that has not merely provoked, but fundamentally weaponized a vital global artery, triggering an unprecedented international response. The strike on a South Korean vessel in particular triggered a red alert across the region's energy supply chains. Iran believed it could bring America's Asian allies to their knees by sealing the strait. But the United States has now pressed the button on an unprecedented and sweeping operation, signaling that it will no longer grant Tehran even one last chance in the waters of Hormuz. Launched on May 4th under the directive of President Donald Trump, Project Freedom aims to seize full control of the Strait of Hormuz and forcibly reopen commercial transit. This colossal project is not a simple escort mission. It is a devastating display of force that pushes well beyond the limits of tolerance. Indeed, according to reports based on CBS News, the first major test of this force in the field took place on May 4th. Two U.S. Navy destroyers, the USS Truckton and the USS Mason, successfully transited the Strait of Hormuz under heavy Iranian fire. Supported by fighter jets and AH-64 Apache helicopters, these destroyers came under a coordinated and sustained barrage from Iranian small boats, cruise missiles, and drones. Despite this terrifying onslaught, no American ship was hit, and all threats were neutralized immediately. This immediate and complete neutralization of a multi-pronged attack is highly unusual, demonstrating a level of integrated defense capability rarely seen in open combat scenarios, and suggesting a significant technological advantage that shifts traditional naval engagement paradigms. Following this successful transit and Iran's failed attack attempts, the dynamics in the region began to shift. The U.S. has begun deploying an unparalleled volume of firepower toward this narrow choke point, Tehran's most prized leverage. Missile destroyers stationed at the mouth of the strait have already erected a wall of steel. Alongside these surface giants, nuclear-powered submarines waiting silently in the dark depths of the ocean have locked on to strategic targets. These steel ghosts, carrying hundreds of Tomahawk cruise missiles in their cells, are awaiting a single wrong move from Tehran. More than 100 American warplanes, launched from land and sea, have taken to the skies, virtually blacking out the heavens. In addition, a full 15,000 American troops have flooded into the region and taken up positions for this massive operation. The nerve center of this enormous military buildup is the strategically located Al Dhafra Air Base in the United Arab Emirates. FA-18C Hornets taking off from Al Dhafra have gone on full alert across the region. These jets are weaving a wall of flesh and steel against Iran's dangerous drone swarms in the sky. Every foreign aerial unit that appears on radar is met within seconds by the relentless lock-on of these hunters. Just below them, A-10C Thunderbolts, better known as flying tanks, have begun cruising the area. These aircraft, armed with a 30mm Gatling gun, firing 3,900 rounds per minute, have only one target: to shred Iran's infamous fast attack boats into pieces in seconds. US UAVs are on standby to spread across every corner of Hormuz. Multi-domain drones are conducting millimeter-precise sweeps in the air and at sea, instantly relaying the slightest threat to the Pentagon. Joining this technological siege are autonomous Malloy drones, marvels of logistics, building a massive aerial bridge capable of carrying heavy payloads. Malloy drones shuttle critical munitions and spare parts between warships without pause, ensuring the operation never loses momentum. The AI-powered autonomous systems the Pentagon originally developed for the Pacific are also making their debut in these waters for the very first time. Thousands of microdrones are wrapping every centimeter of Hormuz like a deadly hive. These autonomous systems eliminate human error, capable of detecting Iranian targets and issuing kill decisions in a tenth of a second. The deployment of AI-powered autonomous systems, capable of issuing kill decisions in fractions of a second, marks a significant evolution in military doctrine, moving beyond human-in-the-loop engagement and setting a new, potentially controversial precedent for rapid response in contested maritime zones. This entire massive military force has been deployed to paralyze Iran's strategic naval assets. A critical, impenetrable deterrent has been established in the region to neutralize all other military capabilities. With every one of these moves, the United States is irreversibly rewriting the power dynamics of the Middle East overnight. From now on, the rules of the game in the Gulf are dictated by the Pentagon and the Pentagon alone. The massive military assets deployed to the field have already declared their first victory in the boiling waters of Hormuz. Within the very first hours of the operation, between 6 and 7 Iranian fast attack boats attempting to approach commercial vessels were destroyed. These boats were sent to the bottom of Hormuz's dark, hot waters by strategic strikes. The Revolutionary Guard stood helpless at their radios in the face of this terrifying firepower raining down from the sky in mere seconds. The shallow waters of Hormuz were left covered with shattered fiberglass wreckage and fireballs. These shocking losses landed like a cold shower at the Revolutionary Guard's headquarters, shattering the morale of the entire chain of command. Iranian sailors, long indoctrinated to believe themselves invincible, are now refusing to even embark on suicide missions in the face of this overwhelming technological superiority. President Trump declared to the entire world that these boats are all Iran has left. Meanwhile, the colossal steel shield the U.S. has built across Hormuz delivered another stunning success. 2 U.S.-flagged commercial vessels successfully transited the strait, despite all of Iran's threats and orders to open fire. This was not merely a transit. It was a massive military slap to Tehran's authority. At the same time, the merciless naval blockade established by the American fleet continues at full force. As of now, a total of 50 commercial vessels have been rerouted under the maritime blockade for security purposes. However, the real scale of the crisis and the blockade is far more alarming. According to the latest statement by U.S. Joint Chiefs of Staff Chairman General Dan Kane at the Pentagon, more than 1,550 commercial vessels and 22,500 seafarers are currently stranded in the Persian Gulf due to Iran's blockade of the strait. This staggering number of stranded vessels and seafarers highlights the unprecedented economic chokehold now exerted on global shipping, a far greater immediate impact than many previous regional conflicts, underscoring the Strait of Hormuz's irreplaceable role in international trade and energy supply. General Kane also confirmed that Iran has attacked 9 commercial ships so far and has carried out additional strikes against the United Arab Emirates and Oman. Furthermore, following the ceasefire violations, Iran has launched more than 10 attacks against U.S. forces. However, Kane noted that these attacks have not yet crossed the threshold that would require a large-scale military response. For this reason, the United States is not loosening its grip on Iran in the region at all. Massive destroyers like the USS Pinckney are patrolling the area, personally enforcing this blockade. This impenetrable surface blockade is paired with MQ-9 Reaper-armed UAVs continuously patrolling overhead. The next-generation drone warfare unfolding in narrow strategic maritime corridors like Hormuz is quite literally rewriting the history of naval combat. These unmanned platforms patrolling the skies to secure energy transit can detect and report even the slightest mine movement beneath the surface to demolition teams the moment it happens. As we can see, Iran has now been driven into a corner, quite literally, within the very strait it had wielded for years as its greatest leverage. Not a single ship from outside can dock at Iranian ports. Not a single ship from within can leave Iranian waters safely. The U.S. military is, in effect, severing Tehran's windpipe. This is not a routine military advantage or patrol mission. It is a flawless strategic encirclement that imprisons Iran in its own home and reduces its room to maneuver to zero. Yet, Project Freedom and this devastating naval blockade are merely the small opening act of the storm on the horizon, because the targets Washington has planned for the next phase following these moves are far more terrifying for Tehran. If Iran does not back down, Washington may press the next major button on the military map. A heavy wave of air and naval strikes, launched via guided missiles fired from aircraft carriers and warplanes, could begin. Topping the target list are all the storage facilities Iran has barely managed to rebuild. Most of these facilities are carefully concealed underground, beneath tons of concrete. But the precision-guided bunker busters in America's arsenal can level these fortified vaults in seconds. Stockpiled munitions and strategic fuel reserves could effectively vaporize in chain explosions. These hidden depots, buried meters beneath the earth, could face wave after wave of shockwaves. Such facilities could be wiped clean off the map within seconds by America's advanced missiles. The second major target in any subsequent operation would be the Iranian military bases directly tied to the security of the strait. In particular, ballistic missile and unmanned aerial vehicle facilities, strategically hidden around Hormuz, could be obliterated. Mobile missile launchers carved into mountain foothills could be neutralized by Tomahawk cruise missiles before they ever fire a shot. Iran's much-vaunted lethal kamikaze drones, reduced to ash before they can even leave their hangars, would dramatically break the back of the IRGC's power. Radar stations lining the coastline could be neutralized by EA-18G Growler electronic warfare aircraft. Striking these bases would, in an instant, drag down Iran's entire asymmetric strike capability in the region, but the Pentagon's gun barrels likely will not be confined to the coastline alone. In the third phase, the arrows would be aimed directly at the brain of the regime, the massive command centers in Tehran and Isfahan. This simultaneous massive air campaign could be backed by strikes that completely sever communication networks. The goal would be to leave Iranian generals unable to issue even a single order to their troops in the field, with every radar screen going completely dark. Because once the chain of command is broken, the Iranian military will be reduced to a headless asymmetric player on the battlefield. The destruction of these centers could paralyze every internal communication and coordination channel within the Iranian military. Another wave of targets could turn toward Iran's last remaining lifelines to the world, its maritime trade. The ports of Bandar Abbas and Bushehr appear to sit squarely in the crosshairs of American missiles. The massive loading cranes and piers at these ports would be the first elements on the radar, because at this stage, Bushehr's strategic naval military infrastructure could be paralyzed by precision strikes, sealing off any access to the sea entirely. Naval repair shipyards and dry docks could be turned into massive craters by laser-guided bombs dropped from warplanes. The collapse of these ports would mean the entire logistical network of Iran toppling like a house of cards. For this reason, the next wave of operations could very well include these strategic zones on its target list. Another area on America's radar is Iran's lifeline, the strategic oil platforms in the Gulf. These billion-dollar steel islands rising out of the sea could be picked off one by one with advanced anti-ship missiles. Because halting oil production entirely would be the most lethal blow ever struck against Tehran's flow of hard currency. Hitting these platforms could be the final bullet fired into the regime's revenue streams. For that reason, the US will absolutely not pass up this opportunity in the next operational wave. Trump himself has spoken of this many times already. If they refuse to come to the negotiating table, he has stated, perhaps more than once by now, that he will send Iran back to the Stone Age. On the other hand, the radar of any future operational wave also includes targets aimed at psychological impact. That is, key Iranian officials who form the backbone of the regime. Senior commanders and political figures, tracked by intelligence networks down to the second, could become targets in the next phase. Even while hiding in the shadows, the leadership cadre may feel the deadly threat of American armed UAVs breathing down their necks. Hellfire R-9X Ninja missiles, gliding silently through the air, can take out targets inside vehicles with surgical precision. Pinpoint operations against critical figures could utterly shatter the morale of the Iranian military. But the most striking, most radical, and most lethal move in the scenario is hidden in an entirely different place. A special military operation aimed at seizing Kharg Island. This is no ordinary patch of land. Kharg Island is the very heart of Iran's oil industry, the sole hub of its oil exports. Elite special forces, capable of silently descending on the island in the dead of night, could secure critical facilities within seconds. A potential amphibious operation, backed by warplanes from above, would not give Iranian defenses the time even to reach for their weapons. The American flag flying over the most strategic island in the Gulf could declare the ultimate victory in the psychological war. This is one of the highly risky yet most fervently desired moves on the table. But a potential ground operation against this island would not be limited to lightly armed special forces alone. The Navy's massive landing ships, carrying heavily armored units, could approach Kharg shores directly once the mine and attack boat threats in Hormuz are completely eliminated. When the landing ramps drop, Abrams tanks, among the deadliest land vehicles in the world, could roar onto the island's sands with their engines howling. The 120mm guns on the Abrams have the firepower to mercilessly shred the last concrete bunkers and pockets of resistance on the island. Bradley fighting vehicles, advancing alongside them with their tow missiles and 25mm chain guns, could effectively flatten Iranian trenches. In such a scenario, every road connecting the island's critical facilities could be entirely cut off by armored vehicles dropped from the air. The possibility of the US seizing this island through an unexpected special forces and armored operation would change the entire course of the war. The fall of the island would mean Iran's economy being unplugged completely and irreversibly. So, however risky it may be, this much discussed and persistently rumored potential operation against Kharg Island has never left the agenda. How do all of these military and strategic pressures the US has rolled out, one after another, corner Iran? The Tehran regime is rapidly approaching the absolute limits of its military capacity and endurance. Against the hundreds of American warplanes blanketing the sky, all they have left are small speedboats. Munitions are running out, drones are being shot down, and the last remaining attack boats are sinking into the waters of the Gulf. Behind this military rout lies a far more devastating and shattering picture. The comprehensive naval blockade is dragging the Iranian economy into a massive black hole with every passing second. Oil cannot be sold. Cargo ships cannot dock at the ports. Iranian banks' foreign currency reserves are evaporating rapidly, and the black market is becoming the country's only bitter reality. As the Iranian rial plunges into freefall on international markets, the dollar's price on the black market is reaching astronomical, never-before-seen levels within hours. Cut off entirely from the international banking system, the Tehran regime is sliding into a profound liquidity crisis where it cannot even pay its civil servants' salaries. Domestic inflation and economic turmoil sit waiting like a volcano ready to erupt. The pent-up rage of a population unable to meet even its basic needs in the streets is beginning to shake the foundations of the regime. With supply chains severed, shelves are emptying, and even in the capital, Tehran, food lines are descending into chaos. The Tehran regime will be locked in a relentless war on two fronts, fighting American bombardments on one side and confronting street uprisings from its own starving population on the other. The massive military apparatus that once struck fear into the entire region will begin to crumble from within, undone by the mutiny of soldiers stripped of their logistical support. Iran, which spent years blackmailing the world from the very edge of this strait, is now watching its own helplessness unfold. It is no longer possible for Tehran to withstand such immense technological power and a full-spectrum economic blockade. A shortage of military munitions, collapsing logistical lines, and vanishing oil revenues are eating away at the regime from the inside. Completely isolated and ostracized on the international stage, Tehran has no allies left to turn to. Time is running against Iran, as merciless and swift as the currents of Hormuz itself. The regime is fighting not only the American Navy, but also a complete economic collapse that is rapidly closing in. In short, this unprecedented military operation is not being carried out merely to open the strait. This move is aimed at permanently ending Iran's years-long game in the Middle East. The United States has overturned the chessboard and is rewriting the rules of Hormuz. Now the eyes of the entire world are fixed on Iran, cornered and gasping for breath. So, in your view, will Iran launch an all-out suicide attack in the face of this overwhelming and unprecedented American military force? Or will it raise the white flag at the negotiating table to save the regime from economic collapse? Could America's potential seizure of Karg Island ignite not just a regional defeat, but the spark of a new world war in the Middle East?